There are winters that merely freeze the earth, and there are winters that reach inside the human soul. They turn affection into disgust, memory into emptiness, and living hearts into cold, silent stones. Long ago, in a crowded town of steep roofs and narrow streets, two children learned that the cruelest winter does not fall from the sky. It begins with a single splinter of glass. Welcome to Whispers in the Dark. Make yourself comfortable, dim the lights, and remember that some things look back when you stare into them. Now listen carefully, because somewhere beyond the northern lights, the Snow Queen is still searching for children who believe they have nothing left to fear. Now let's begin. The mirror had been fashioned in a place without sunlight. Its maker was a wicked troll, a creature so ancient and corrupted that those who served him whispered that he was the devil himself. He kept a school beneath the earth, hidden beyond a passage lined with the skulls of those who had tried to escape. There, his pupils learned how to sour happiness, poison love, and find the smallest weakness in every living thing. The troll wanted to prove that goodness was only an illusion. He desired an instrument that could reveal the ugliness he believed existed beneath every kind face and generous deed. For 7 years, he melted black sand in a furnace fed with bones. He mixed it with the tears of murderers, the blood of traitors, and water taken from beneath the graves of unbaptized children. When the glass was ready, he cooled it beneath the light of a dead moon and set it inside a frame carved from a tree on which 3 innocent men had been hanged. The finished mirror possessed a terrible power. Everything beautiful that appeared in it shrank into something pitiful and repulsive. Green fields resembled carpets of mold. Clear streams became channels of filth. A loving smile looked like the grin of a hungry corpse, but anything cruel, diseased, or hateful grew clearer. A freckle became a spreading sore. A moment of anger became murderous rage. A secret doubt became a certainty that nothing in the world deserved to live. Those who looked into the mirror saw the worst possible version of everyone they loved. The troll and his pupils laughed until blood ran from their mouths. They carried the mirror across the earth. Kings looked into it and ordered their families executed. Priests saw monsters kneeling before them and set fire to their churches. Mothers gazed at their children and imagined changelings wearing stolen skin. The pupils grew ambitious. They wished to carry the mirror into heaven so that angels themselves could be mocked and twisted by its reflection. They climbed higher and higher through the clouds, lifting the enormous glass between them. As they approached the light above, the mirror began to tremble. The beauty of heaven was too great for its corrupted surface. Cracks spread through it like black veins. The pupils lost their grip. The mirror fell. It struck the earth with a sound heard only by the dying. The glass exploded into millions upon millions of fragments. Some were as large as windows. Others were smaller than grains of sand. The troll expected his creation to be destroyed. Instead, its evil multiplied. Large fragments were fitted into windows, causing families to watch the world outside with suspicion and disgust. Smaller pieces were made into spectacles that allowed judges to see guilt in every innocent face. The tiniest splinters drifted upon the wind. When one entered a human eye, its victim saw only ugliness. When one entered a human heart, that heart slowly became a lump of ice. The troll watched the glittering dust scatter across the world, and his laughter shook the caverns beneath the mountains. Years passed. In a great town where houses crowded tightly together, two poor families lived in adjoining garrets beneath the roofs. Their homes were small, and the windows leaned toward one another across a narrow gutter. The boy was called Kai. The girl was called Gerda. They were not brother and sister, but they loved one another as deeply as if they shared the same blood. In summer, they could climb through their windows and cross the gutter with a single careful step. Their parents had placed wooden boxes along the roofs, filling them with vegetables, sweet peas, and 2 rose trees whose branches met above the windows. Beneath that arch of flowers, Kai and Gerda created a world of their own. Kai was slender, pale, and curious. His gray eyes were always searching for hidden patterns. He liked numbers, puzzles, and stories about distant lands. Gerda was warm-faced and gentle, with thick hair the color of honey in sunlight. Where Kai wanted to understand everything, Gerda wanted to care for it. They spent long afternoons beneath the roses. They looked through picture books, watched swallows build their nests, and listened to the church bells rolling over the town. When winter arrived, the gutter filled with snow, separating their windows. Ice spread across the panes until the children could no longer see each other. They heated copper coins on the stove and pressed them against the frost, creating small, round openings. Through those holes, one bright eye peered from each window. Kai's grandmother told them that snowflakes were white bees. "Do the white bees have a queen?" Kai asked. "They do," grandmother replied. "She is larger than all the others. She never rests upon the ground. On winter nights, she flies through the streets and looks into people's windows. Wherever she gazes, frost flowers grow upon the glass." "Can the Snow Queen enter our house?" Gerda asked. Kai laughed. "Let her come. I will put her on the stove and melt her." Grandmother did not laugh. She stared at the darkening window and drew the curtains. That night Kai awoke to a faint tapping. He climbed from bed and approached the window. One of the copper circles remained in the frost. Through it, he saw a single snowflake resting inside the flower box. The flake expanded. Its branching crystals unfolded like the legs of a white spider. It grew until it became the figure of a woman. She wore a flowing garment made from countless flakes. Her skin was smooth and colorless. A crown of frozen spikes rose from her head, and her eyes shone with the distant light of stars, seen through a graveyard mist. She was beautiful, yet nothing living existed within that beauty. Her lips curved into a smile. Behind her teeth, Kai glimpsed a darkness deeper than the winter sky. She raised one long finger and beckoned. Kai felt his hand moving toward the latch. Then something struck the roof above him. He jumped away, and the figure burst apart into a storm of snow. A great white shape passed the window like an enormous bird. In the morning, there were scratches on the outer glass. Spring returned. The snow melted into black water that dripped from the eaves. The roses produced new leaves, and the children resumed their games. For a time, Kai forgot the woman at the window. One warm afternoon, he and Gerda sat beneath the roses, looking at pictures of birds and animals. As the church clock struck 5, a sharp wind moved across the roof. Something glittered in the sunlight. Kai suddenly pressed a hand to his chest. Something stabbed my heart. Gerda put down the book. Before she could speak, Kai cried out again and covered his right eye. Something has gone into it. Gerda leaned close. His eye had begun to water, but she could see no dust or insect. She placed her arms around him and asked him to blink. For one instant, she saw a tiny black reflection moving across his pupil. Then it disappeared. "I think it is gone," Kai said. It was not gone. A splinter of the troll mirror had entered his eye. Another had pierced his heart. The change began immediately. Kai looked at Gerda's worried face and laughed. "Why are you making that stupid expression?" Gerda released him. "I was frightened for you. You look hideous when you are frightened." He turned toward the roses. Until that moment, Kai had loved them. Now he saw the dark spots on their petals. He noticed beetles moving through the soil, and a pale worm curled around one of the roots. "These flowers are disgusting." He tore off a rose and crushed it between his fingers. Red petals clung to his skin like scraps of flesh. Gerda tried to stop him, but he kicked the wooden box. The old timber split. Soil poured into the gutter, carrying torn roots and writhing worms with it. When Gerda cried, Kai imitated the sound of her sobbing. He crossed to his window and left her kneeling among the ruined flowers. His cruelty worsened. He mocked grandmother's stories and hid pins in her chair. He imitated strangers in the street, exaggerating their disabilities until other children laughed. He trapped a sparrow beneath a basket and pulled out its feathers one at a time to study how long it continued struggling. When Gerda discovered him, the bird was still alive. Its naked body trembled in his hand. Blood shone along its torn skin. "Please stop," she whispered. Kai looked at the sparrow as if it were a broken toy. "It is only an ugly little animal." He opened his hand and let it fall from the roof. Gerda watched it strike the street below. She no longer recognized the boy standing beside her, yet she refused to abandon him. Each morning she climbed through his window. She brought him books, repaired the rose box, and reminded him of summers they had shared. The splinter in Kai's heart grew colder. By winter, he could no longer remember why he had ever loved her. Snow covered the town. Children gathered in the square with their sleds, and Kai joined the strongest boys. He tied his little sled to passing carts and allowed them to pull him across the frozen streets. Late one afternoon, snow began falling so heavily that the buildings vanished behind a white curtain. A magnificent sleigh entered the square. It was painted white and lined with fur. Its driver wore a white cloak and hood. Kai could not see the face within, but he tied his sled to the back of the sleigh. The sleigh carried him away. At first he laughed. Its runners hissed across the snow, traveling faster than any horse-drawn carriage. Soon they had left the square behind. Kai tried to loosen the rope. It tightened around his hands. The sleigh passed through the town gates and raced into the countryside. Snow struck Kai's face. His fingers became stiff. He called for help, but the storm devoured his voice. The driver turned. The hood fell away. The Snow Queen gazed at him. Up close, her beauty was unbearable. Her face possessed the perfect stillness of a corpse preserved beneath clear ice. Her eyes were pale blue cavities, and tiny shapes moved within them. Kai realized they were people. They clawed at the inside of her eyes, their mouths open in silent screams. "You tied yourself to me," the Snow Queen said. "Why are you afraid?" Kai tried to answer, but his teeth rattled violently. She lifted him into the sleigh. The rope had sliced through his palms, leaving bright red wounds. She touched them, and the blood froze into crimson crystals. "You are freezing." She kissed his forehead. The cold entered his skull like a nail. His body convulsed. For several seconds, he felt every vein harden. Then the pain disappeared. The Snow Queen kissed him again. Kai forgot the town. He forgot grandmother. He forgot Gerda. "One more kiss would kill you," the Snow Queen whispered. "But perhaps death would be kinder than what I have prepared." Her cloak opened around him. Inside it, Kai heard the cries of countless lost children. The sleigh rose into the storm. By evening, Kai had not returned. People searched the square, the streets, and the frozen river. Someone found his sled near the town gate. The rope attached to it had been cut, and blood stained the wooden seat. Many believed Kai had fallen into the river. Gerda did not. She remembered the frost flowers and the woman who had beckoned from the roof. When spring came, Gerda put on her new red shoes and walked alone to the river. She asked the water if it had taken Kai. The river murmured around the reeds, but gave no answer. "I will give you my red shoes if you return him." She stepped into a small boat and threw the shoes into the current. One landed near the bank, so Gerda reached for it. The boat shifted beneath her. Its rope slipped free from the post, and the current carried her away. Gerda called for help until the town disappeared. The boat drifted for hours. Trees leaned over the river, their branches trailing through the water like long fingers. As evening approached, Gerda saw something pale floating beside her. It was the swollen face of a child. Its open eyes followed the boat. More bodies surfaced behind it. Boys and girls drifted among the reeds, their clothing tangled with weeds. Their mouths moved beneath the water, whispering Kai's name. Gerda covered her ears and prayed. When she looked again, there were only white water lilies floating upon the river. At last, the boat approached a small house with red and blue windows. 2 wooden soldiers stood beside the door, lifting their weapons whenever the wind moved them. An old woman came from the house. She leaned upon a hooked stick and wore a broad hat painted with flowers. Her smile seemed kind, but her teeth were dark and pointed. The old woman pulled the boat ashore. "What a poor little traveler you are," she said. "Come into my garden. You need never be lonely again." Gerda followed her through a gate. Beyond it lay a garden more beautiful than any she had seen. Every flower of every season bloomed at once. Lilies rose beside winter snowdrops. Apple trees carried blossoms and ripe fruit together. The air was sweet and warm. The old woman combed Gerda's hair with a golden comb. With each stroke, Gerda's memories faded. She forgot the river. She forgot her home. She almost forgot Kai. The old woman had practiced magic for many years. She was not wholly wicked, but loneliness had rotted her love into possession. Travelers entered her garden and rarely left. Beneath every flower bed rested the bones of someone she had wanted to keep. She caused the rose trees to sink into the earth, fearing they might remind Gerda of Kai. Gerda remained in the garden while days dissolved into one another. The flowers sang to her in voices too quiet for ordinary ears. Each told a story. The tiger lily described a warrior whose body had been opened from throat to stomach. The morning glory whispered of a woman buried alive. The hyacinth sang of 3 sisters poisoned at their wedding feast. At first Gerda believed these were merely sad tales. Then she noticed faces in the centers of the flowers. Human faces. They were tiny and twisted, their eyes blinking beneath layers of petals. Roots had entered their mouths and grown through their skulls. One evening, Gerda saw the old woman kneeling beside an empty patch of soil. A traveler lay before her. His legs twitched weakly. The old woman opened his shirt and pressed seeds into cuts along his chest. "Sleep now," she murmured. "In spring, you will be beautiful." Green shoots pushed from the wounds. The man tried to scream, but roots filled his throat. Flowers unfolded from his eyes. Gerda fled through the garden. She reached the place where the roses had once grown and saw one painted upon the old woman's hat. The sight struck something buried inside her memory. Kai. At the sound of his name, the earth trembled. The hidden roses burst from the ground. Their thorns were slick with old blood. Tangled among their roots were human bones. Gerda knelt before them. Is Kai dead? The roses shook their heads. We have been beneath the earth, they whispered. The dead are there, but Kai is not among them. The old woman entered the garden, holding her golden comb. You are confused, child. Let me help you forget. Behind her, the flowers bent toward Gerda. Their human faces opened their mouths, pleading with her to stay. The garden had fed upon their memories for years. Now it hungered for hers. Gerda seized a thorny branch. The thorns cut deeply into her palms, but the pain cleared the last of the enchantment. She tore through the hedge and ran. The old woman screamed behind her. Every flower in the garden screamed with her. Gerda did not stop until the beautiful house had vanished. Outside the garden, autumn had arrived. Gerda had believed she had stayed only a few days, but many months had passed. The trees were bare. Her feet were bleeding, and her thin dress offered little protection from the wind. A large crow hopped onto a branch above her. Gerda asked if he had seen Kai. The crow told her that a princess in a nearby kingdom had chosen a clever young prince. From the crow's confused description, Gerda became convinced the prince was Kai. The crow led her to the palace. His tame sweetheart lived there and understood the secret passages. That night, the two birds guided Gerda through dark corridors. The palace was magnificent, but it held a peculiar silence. Wax candles burned in silver holders. Suits of armor stood along the walls. Their metal heads turned as Gerda passed. She heard scratching from within them. Gerda stopped beside one suit and looked through its visor. A human eye stared back. The crow urged her onward. The princess dislikes careless servants, he whispered. Those who disappoint her are placed inside the armor. After several weeks, they become quiet. From behind the metal came a thin voice. Water. Gerda reached toward the visor, but the armor seized her wrist. Several other suits stepped from the walls. The tame crow cried out a warning. Gerda pulled free, leaving a strip of skin upon an iron finger, and ran. They reached the royal bedchamber. 2 beds stood beneath a ceiling painted with silver leaves. In one slept the princess. In the other lay a dark-haired young man. Gerda whispered Kai's name. The young prince opened his eyes. He was not Kai. Gerda collapsed, exhausted and heartbroken. Her cries awakened the prince and princess. Once they heard her story, they took pity on her. They gave her warm clothes, fur boots, and a muff. They also provided a golden carriage with a coachman, footman, and postilions. The forest crow traveled with her for the first part of the journey. When the time came for him to return, Gerda embraced him and wept. She did not know that she would never see him alive again. The golden carriage entered a dark forest. Mist twisted between the trees. The trunks were marked with symbols cut into the bark. Bones hung from branches, chiming whenever the wind blew. Robbers surrounded the carriage. They dragged the coachman from his seat and split his head with an axe. The footman tried to flee, but an arrow entered his back. He fell beneath the horses, and the wheels crushed his face into the mud. One postilion begged for mercy. An old robber woman with a bristling beard pushed a knife beneath his chin and opened his throat. Blood sprayed across the golden door. Gerda was pulled from the carriage. The old robber woman grabbed her by the hair and examined her. "She is plump," the woman said, "fattened like a little lamb. Her liver will be sweet." She pressed the knife against Gerda's stomach. Before she could cut, someone bit her ear. The robber woman screamed. Her daughter clung to her back. The little robber girl was about Gerda's age, but broader and stronger. Her skin was brown, her eyes were almost black, and 2 pistols hung from her belt. "She will play with me," the robber girl announced. Her mother raised the knife. The girl bit through the upper part of her mother's ear and spat it into the mud. The robbers roared with laughter. The old woman struck her daughter across the face, but the little robber girl only smiled. Blood covered her teeth. Gerda was taken to the robbers' castle, a decaying fortress hidden in the forest. Cracks split its walls from foundation to roof. Ravens flew through the empty windows. Huge dogs strained against chains in the courtyard. Inside, a fire burned beneath a black cauldron. Gerda smelled cooked meat. At first, she believed the shapes hanging above the fire were pigs. Then, she saw a human hand curling in the heat. The robbers drank and sang while the old woman stirred the cauldron. Skinned animals hung from hooks beside the bodies of murdered travelers. Fat dripped onto the stones. The little robber girl led Gerda to a corner filled with straw and rugs. Pigeons roosted above them. 2 wild wood pigeons were imprisoned behind wooden bars. Near the bed stood a reindeer tethered by a copper ring. "This is Bay," the robber girl said. "He is my favorite." She drew her knife and rubbed the edge against the reindeer's neck. Bay kicked in terror. The girl laughed. "Every night I tickle him with my knife." Gerda stared at the scars covering Bay's throat. Some were old and pale. Others had barely closed. The robber girl climbed into bed, keeping her knife in one hand. She wrapped her other arm around Gerda's neck. "If the robbers try to kill you, I will stop them," she said. "Unless I become angry. Then I will kill you myself." Soon she fell asleep. Gerda remained awake, listening to bones crack between the robbers' teeth. Above her, the wood pigeons began to whisper. "We have seen Kai. We saw the Snow Queen carrying him through the sky. Her breath froze our nest. All our young ones died." "Where did she take him?" Gerda whispered. "To Lapland," they answered. "Ask the reindeer. He knows the northern lands." Bay lifted his scarred head. "The Snow Queen has a summer tent in Lapland, but her great palace is near the North Pole, on the island called Spitsbergen. If Kai still lives, he will be there." Gerda began to cry. The robber girl opened her eyes and pressed the knife against Gerda's stomach. "Be quiet, or I will stick this into you." Gerda forced herself to remain still. At dawn, the robber girl learned what the pigeons had said. For a long time, she sat silently. Her gaze moved from Gerda to the reindeer. She had been raised among people who treated suffering as entertainment. She knew how to cut a throat, rob a corpse, and sleep while prisoners begged beneath the floor. Yet Gerda's devotion stirred something unfamiliar inside her. It made her angry. It also made her ashamed. When the robbers left to attack another carriage, and her mother collapsed in a drunken sleep, the girl cut Bay's tether. She returned Gerda's boots and gave her enormous mittens. She kept the muff for herself. "You may take 2 loaves and a ham," she said. "Do not expect anything more." Gerda embraced her. The robber girl stood rigid, as if kindness were another form of attack. "If you do not release me, I will stab you." Gerda stepped back. Bay knelt, and the robber girl tied Gerda securely upon his back. She opened the gate. "Run," she told him. "Take good care of her." Bay bounded into the forest. Behind them, the robber girl watched until the darkness swallowed them. They traveled north by day and night. The forests thinned. Snow covered the land. Wolves followed them at a distance, their eyes shining between the trees. The northern lights appeared overhead. Red and green fires twisted across the sky. Gerda thought they were beautiful until she noticed shadows moving inside them. The shapes resembled people trapped behind colored glass. Bay told her they were souls collected by the Snow Queen. When a traveler froze alone, she drew the final warmth from the body and hung its memory in the sky. The loaves were eaten. The ham disappeared. Gerda grew weak from hunger and cold. At last they reached Lapland. A low hut stood upon the frozen earth. Its roof nearly touched the ground, and smoke leaked through holes in the hide walls. Inside, an old Lapland woman cooked fish over a whale oil lamp. She listened as Bay told Gerda's story. "The Snow Queen is in Finnmark," she said. "Every evening she burns her blue fires in the sky. You still have hundreds of miles to travel." The woman had no paper, so she wrote a message upon a dried codfish and gave it to Gerda. Bay carried her onward. They crossed plains where the wind had stripped frozen animals to the bone. They passed the remains of travelers preserved upright in the ice. Some still held their hands over their faces. One corpse turned its head as Gerda passed. Its frozen jaw fell open. A cloud of black insects poured from its mouth. Despite the deadly cold, Bay ran faster. They reached Finnmark beneath a sky filled with crackling light. The Finn woman's dwelling had no door. Gerda and Bay entered through the chimney. The heat inside was suffocating. The Finn woman was small, dirty, and almost naked because of the temperature. Shelves covered every wall. Upon them stood jars containing animal eyes, bundles of hair, dried fingers, and objects Gerda did not recognize. The woman read the message on the codfish 3 times. Then she dropped it into her soup. Bay begged her to give Gerda the strength of 12 men. The Finn woman ignored him. She unrolled a great animal skin covered with strange writing. As she read, sweat poured down her face. Kai is alive, she said at last. He remains with the Snow Queen because he believes her palace is the finest place in the world. A splinter of glass is lodged in his eye, and another has frozen his heart. Give Gerda a potion, Bay pleaded. Give her power enough to defeat the queen. No power I could provide would be greater than the one she already possesses. Gerda looked at the woman. What power? The Finn woman did not answer her. Instead, she pulled Bay aside. Do you not see what has happened? She whispered. People and animals have served this child without enchantment. She has crossed the world with naked feet because she loves someone who no longer remembers her. Her innocence is her strength. If that cannot save Kai, nothing can. She told Bay that the Snow Queen's garden was 8 miles away. He was to leave Gerda beside a bush covered with red berries and return immediately. Bay carried Gerda as far as he could. When they reached the bush, he lowered her into the snow. In their haste, she had left her boots and mittens inside the suffocating hut. She now stood barefoot in the frozen wilderness. Bay pressed his warm nose against her face. Then he fled. Gerda turned north. The Snow Queen's garden appeared empty, but something moved beneath the snow. A vast army rose around her. Each soldier had been formed from living flakes. Some resembled enormous porcupines. Others looked like coiled snakes, white bears, or headless men. Their bodies constantly broke apart and reformed. They surrounded Gerda. The first creature struck her shoulder. Its claws sliced through her dress and opened the skin beneath. The wound froze before blood could flow. Gerda tried to continue. Another creature wrapped around her ankle. Cold burned through her flesh. Her skin turned gray. She began reciting the prayer grandmother had taught her. Her breath emerged as white mist. Within the mist, shapes appeared. Angels surrounded her, radiant and terrible. They wore armor that shone like heated silver. When the snow creatures attacked, the angels shattered them with flaming spears. Gerda walked through the center of the battle. Each step left a bloody footprint. Ahead, the palace of the Snow Queen rose from the ice. Its walls extended beyond sight. The windows were black openings. Towers curved like the ribs of a colossal dead beast. No guards stood at its gates. The palace itself was the guard. Gerda entered. The wind inside screamed through vast halls. Pillars of frozen mist supported ceilings lost in darkness. The floors were so clear that Gerda could see bodies beneath them. Thousands of people were trapped in the ice. Some wore ancient clothing. Others appeared to have died only days before. Children pressed their hands against the underside of the floor as Gerda passed. Their eyes moved, They were not dead. The Snow Queen had preserved the final instant of their suffering. Their bodies could never decay, and their minds could never escape. One little girl beneath the ice opened her mouth. "Help me." Gerda knelt and struck the floor with her fists. Cracks spread across its surface, but the ice repaired itself immediately. Hands began reaching from below. Gerda forced herself to continue. In another hall, frozen statues stood in 2 perfect rows. Each had once been a child taken by the queen. Their chests had been opened and their hearts removed. Hollow cavities remained beneath their ribs. Something beat behind the walls. Gerda placed her ear against the ice. She heard thousands of hearts pounding together. The Snow Queen had built her palace around them. Their stolen warmth kept the ice alive. At the center of the palace lay a frozen lake called the Mirror of Reason. It had cracked into thousands of pieces, each identical in shape. Kai sat upon it. He was blue with cold and almost black around the fingers. His cheeks had sunk inward. Frost covered his eyelashes, and his hair had turned white. He moved sharp pieces of ice across the floor, arranging them into patterns. Nearby stood a mound of discarded shapes. Gerda approached and realized they were not made entirely from ice. Fingernails, teeth, and tiny bones had been frozen inside them. The Snow Queen had taught Kai to harvest materials from her collection. He had obeyed without emotion. Gerda whispered his name. Kai did not look up. He fitted several pieces together, frowned, and tore them apart again. The Snow Queen had ordered him to form one word: eternity. If he succeeded, she had promised him freedom, the whole world, and a new pair of skates. Kai had worked upon the puzzle for so long that the skin on his knees had worn away. His frozen blood stained the lake beneath him. Kai, Gerda's voice echoed across the hall. He turned. No recognition appeared in his eyes. Gerda ran to him and threw her arms around his body. He was colder than the dead. "I found you," she sobbed. "I found you at last." Kai pushed her away. "You are disturbing the pattern." "It is me. It is Gerda." "I do not know anyone called Gerda." She touched his face. Kai seized a shard of ice and drove it toward her eye. Gerda caught his wrist. The point stopped a finger's width from her pupil. For an instant, she saw herself reflected in the ice. The mirror curse showed her a hideous creature clinging to a boy who despised her. It showed Kai as a murderer beyond salvation. It whispered that she had crossed the world for nothing. Gerda closed her eyes. She embraced him again, even as he cut her shoulder with the shard. Her tears fell upon his chest. They were warm. The first tear melted through his clothing and touched the place above his heart. Steam rose from the skin. Kai screamed. The frozen lump inside his chest began to crack. Gerda held him as his body convulsed. Black veins appeared beneath his skin. Something sharp moved between his ribs, trying to escape the warmth. Kai clawed at his chest. The mirror splinter forced its way outward. It emerged through his skin like the pointed leg of an insect. Gerda grasped it. The glass sliced her fingers to the bone, but she pulled. A long black fragment came free from Kai's heart. It writhed in her hand. Faces moved across its surface, each laughing with the troll's mouth. Gerda threw it onto the lake and crushed it beneath her heel. Kai collapsed. She sang the song they had shared beneath the roses. Her voice trembled, but every word carried through the palace. Kai began to cry. The tears froze against his face at first. Gerda pressed her hands over his eyes, warming them until the ice melted. A tiny fragment washed from his right eye. It skittered across the lake like a black beetle. Kai blinked. Gerda. He looked at her wounds. He saw the blood upon her dress and the raw skin of her feet. Memory returned all at once. He remembered mocking her tears. He remembered the sparrow. He remembered abandoning grandmother and climbing into the Snow Queen's sleigh. Then he remembered the palace, the children, the bones, the things he had done, because the queen had asked him to do them. Kai screamed until his voice broke. Gerda held him. You were under the mirror's curse. I hurt them. You are free now. I remember their faces. A great cracking sound rolled through the palace. The Snow Queen had returned. She appeared above the frozen lake, descending through the ceiling in a spiral of snow. Her cloak spread across the hall like wings. Frost crawled over the pillars. She had traveled to the warm countries and covered the black mouths of Etna and Vesuvius with snow. Black ash stained the hem of her white garment. Her gaze settled upon Gerda. Every frozen heart within the walls beat faster. You entered my palace, the queen said. Gerda stood before Kai. He is coming home. The queen's beautiful face opened along several invisible seams. Her skin unfolded like the petals of a white flower. Beneath, it was a skull made from clear ice. Countless human eyes had been sealed inside the frozen bone. He tied himself to my sleigh. You made him forget. I revealed what he truly was. The queen extended her hand. A spear of ice shot across the lake. Gerda turned. The spear entered her side and passed through her body. Kai caught her as she fell. Blood spread across her dress. It struck the frozen lake in heavy drops. The Snow Queen glided closer. Love has brought you farther than wisdom ever could, she said. But love is only warmth, and all warmth ends. Kai pressed his hands against Gerda's wound. She could no longer feel her legs. The queen reached for him. Kai looked at the pieces of ice surrounding them. All those months, he had tried to form the word eternity through cold reason. Now, as Gerda's blood ran between the pieces, he finally understood. Eternity was not endless winter. It was the part of love that survived suffering. Kai swept his hands across the puzzle. The pieces moved. They joined together, forming the promised word. The entire mirror of reason shuddered. The Snow Queen stopped. The word blazed with white light. She had sworn that, if Kai completed it, he would become his own master. The laws of her palace bound her to that promise. Cracks raced beneath her feet. Kai lifted Gerda and carried her toward the edge of the lake. The Snow Queen shrieked. Her voice shattered pillars. Frozen bodies fell from the walls and burst across the floor. Severed limbs twitched among glittering fragments. The queen's cloak divided into hundreds of grasping arms. Kai ran as they clawed at his back. The word eternity broke apart. Its pieces swirled around the Snow Queen. They sliced through her beautiful outer body, stripping away layers of frost. Beneath the ice skull waited something black, thin, and ancient. The troll's face stared from inside her. The queen had been gathering fragments of his mirror for centuries. Every child she corrupted added another piece. She was no servant of the curse. She was its living vessel. Gerda opened her eyes. She saw the monster rising from the broken shell. With the last of her strength, she sang about the roses. The walls answered. The stolen hearts tore themselves free from the ice. Thousands of red shapes flew through the palace. They struck the black creature and buried themselves inside it. For the first time, the Snow Queen felt every life she had taken. She felt every parent who had waited beside an empty bed. She felt every child crying beneath the frozen floors. She felt Kai's fear. She felt Gerda's love. The queen's scream became human. Her body split apart. A storm of mirror fragments exploded through the palace. Gerda covered Kai's face while he shielded hers. The shards struck the ceiling, the walls, and the frozen lake. The palace began to collapse. Kai carried Gerda through the falling ice. The spear in her side melted as the queen's power failed, leaving a deep but survivable wound. The bodies beneath the floor vanished into mist. Their freed spirits rose toward the northern lights. Kai and Gerda reached the gates as the palace folded inward. Behind them, the Snow Queen's crown struck the ground and shattered. Within one broken point, something opened a blue eye. Then the palace disappeared beneath the snow. Bay waited beside the red berry bush with a young reindeer whose warm milk restored some strength to the children. They returned first to the Finn woman. She treated Gerda's wound and said nothing about the black fragment she removed from it. They traveled to the Lapland woman, who provided warm clothes and carried them onward in her sleigh. At the boundary of the northern country, green buds appeared among the trees. Kai and Gerda said farewell to the reindeer. In the forest, they met the little robber girl, riding the horse that had once drawn Gerda's golden carriage. She wore a red cap and carried pistols in her belt. She studied Kai. So this is the boy who made someone travel to the end of the world. Kai lowered his eyes. The robber girl told Gerda that the prince and princess were traveling in foreign lands. The forest crow was dead. His tame sweetheart wore black wool around one leg, and considered herself a widow. Gerda mourned him. The robber girl pretended not to care, but her eyes glistened. After hearing what had happened, she shook both children's hands and rode north. She wanted to see the place where the Snow Queen had died. Kai and Gerda continued home. Spring followed them. Snow melted. Birds sang among branches covered with new leaves. When they reached their town, the church bells were ringing. They climbed the familiar stairs and entered grandmother's room. Everything remained as it had been. The clock ticked. The wooden stools waited beneath the windows. New roses climbed from the repaired boxes. Yet something had changed. Kai and Gerda were grown. Perhaps years had truly passed. Perhaps the Snow Queen's palace had existed outside ordinary time. Neither could say. Grandmother sat in the sunlight with her Bible open upon her knees. She looked at them for a long moment. Then she began to cry. Kai knelt before her and placed his head in her lap. Gerda sat beside him. For the first time since the splinter entered his eye, Kai looked at the roses and saw neither worms nor decay. He saw color, life, and the patient return of beauty. Summer came. Kai and Gerda often sat beneath the roses, holding hands as they had when they were children. Neither spoke often about the Snow Queen. Gerda's wound never fully healed. On winter nights, it ached with a cold that no fire could remove. Kai dreamed about the children in the palace. Sometimes he woke with small pieces of ice beneath his fingernails. Many years later, when grandmother had died and the 2 wooden stools had begun to rot, Kai found something inside the flower box. A sliver of clear glass rested among the roots. He picked it up carefully. In its surface, he saw Gerda standing behind him. For one terrible instant, her reflection had no eyes. A white hand rested upon her shoulder. Kai dropped the glass and crushed it beneath a stone. That winter was the coldest the town had ever known. Frost flowers covered every window. People vanished from the streets, leaving only trails of footprints that ended beneath empty skies. One night, Kai and Gerda heard tapping against the glass. 3 slow taps, then 3 more. They approached the window together. Beyond it, snow filled the darkness. A tall woman stood upon the opposite roof. Her body was cracked and incomplete. One side of her face had been replaced by a smooth mirror, and countless human eyes moved beneath her transparent crown. The Snow Queen raised one finger. She beckoned. Kai reached for the curtain. Gerda caught his hand. Together, they turned away from the window and began singing the song of the roses. The tapping continued until morning. When sunlight finally entered the room, the woman was gone. Only a message remained, cut deeply into the frost. Eternity is not finished, and that is where our story ends, although the Snow Queen's winter may not be over. Mirrors still break. Splinters still travel upon the wind. Even now, One may be resting inside the eye of someone you love, waiting to turn kindness into cruelty and affection into hate. So if you awaken tonight and hear tapping against your window, do not look outside. Do not touch the frost. Most importantly, never invite the woman in white to enter, no matter how beautiful she appears. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this darker and more horrifying tale of the Snow Queen, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which classic fairy tale should be transformed into a nightmare next. Until the next story, keep the fire burning, cover every mirror, and do not follow the sound of sleigh bells into the snow. Good night.
Whispers of a love so true, painting dreams of me and you. And I'll hold you close in this moment so divine. Whispers of